Welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Commercial Real Estate 101 Meetup Group. For those of you guys who are tuning in for the first time, we actually started this group back in early 2020, kind of in response to COVID. There was not a lot of people getting out there, and a lot of people started going virtually. And so, I figured why not create a platform where people can get together on a bi-monthly basis to learn about the various facets of commercial real estate. And ever since then, we've had speakers come from all across the nation to talk about a variety of different subjects. And today we have the honor of hosting Nick Terry. Nick actually was on a podcast that I run as well. It provided so much great insight that I thought, why not have him on for the meetup as well, to talk a little bit about what he does on the office side. And he also deals a lot in the industrial sector. He is located in Houston, Texas. So, we're going to kind of play off a little bit of those two, but really, we're really interested in hearing, the office experiences and insights that he has as well. So Nick, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
Oh, absolutely. So, I kind of gave the group a little bit of a high level overview of, who you are, but if you don't mind kind of telling us a little bit about yourself, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Been in the business better part of a decade. I started on the construction side and real quickly realized, in my opinion, I was on the wrong end of the supply chain. And so I went over to the demand driving side, into brokerage, started at, kind of a boutique regional firm here, went up, did the big global brand thing for a little bit. And then in 2020, stepped out and launched Raphael on my own. And now we've kind of grown the team a little bit, and we're doing all the things. We've got, investment, had a development meeting this morning, but still brokerage, kind of primarily is what pays the bills. Started on the tenant rep side. Since then, during the pandemic, when I launched the company, we pivoted into doing a lot with owners, everybody from up to Brookfield Properties on the institutional side to small mom and pops that are doing their first investment deal and want some guidance on how to lease it up and manage it well. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know you mentioned on our podcast previously, but you came from, like you said, a different background, but it was related to the heavy power. Like I remember you were mentioning, wasn't electrical, was it contracting? I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, that's right. No, I worked for Square D. So I was on the electrical commercial construction side. So we were doing kind of the switch here. I literally toured a building yesterday that I was like, fun fact about this building, I sold the bus duct that went in here. Like I was here when it was getting developed. So I know it better than the listing agent. I've literally crawled around all the closets and stuff. So it was kind of funny, but yeah, it's great gig, big corporate company, learned a lot of things I liked. Just realized big company life isn't for me. But it was fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm sure it provided you with a lot of great insights that you now apply into your brokerage side as well. So
that's right. For sure.
I'm sure it served you extremely well. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on is obviously the purpose of this meetup is pertaining to the office side, or the office property type. And so you kind of alluded to the fact that you do work on the tenant rep side quite a bit. So one of the things that I was kind of curious about, as you start working with, these office tenants, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see that these individuals face as they're going through the process of trying to secure space for their needs?
Yeah, for sure. The biggest thing on the tenant rep side is, and I'm a little bit biased as a broker, but not having good representation. I think that'd be the first one any broker would say, but really, there's no reason not to, right? The fees are already baked into the deal. The owners typically aren't going to give you, here in the Houston market, we get 4% on the tenant rep side of the gross rent. You're not going to get that sort of a concession off the rent just if you try and represent yourself. So it's not like there's a big savings to have. Usually the landlord's rep just take a bigger chunk of the fee and you're not represented. So, having competent representation fixes a number of those issues. But number two would be focusing too much on just the economics, base rent, free rent, all that sort of stuff. That's important for the deal for sure. That drives a lot of the initial discussions, but having, not getting hammered on a sublease clause. There's so many times we help somebody do a disposition requirement on space, and we'll come in and look at the sublease, and it's got a $1,500 landlord review fee, and they have 60 days to approve the deal, and all these minutia that actually matters and costs you money at some point. But you just don't, you didn't spend any time reading that clause. So a well-negotiated lease document outside of just the basic economic terms would be the second thing I'd focus on. And then third is just getting enamored with amenities you're not going to use. We sit in these meetings, we'll hear people like, we have to have a gym, we have to have a conference center, we have to have all this sort of stuff. And then 2-3 years into their deal, you just kind of check back or even ask the landlord, like, hey, are they using any of that stuff? I'm like, no, not a single time. So they're paying for it, but they're not using it.
Have you seen that be pretty common as of late now that with COVID and everything? Has that desire or that their profile as far as what the perfect space looks like, has that shifted at all?
A little bit. You're starting to see fewer, we're doing a deal right now where there's fewer assigned desks, pushing more. It didn't change anything massively. It just accelerated. I think people were moving that way anyway, but the hoteling sort of model that's been going on for a while, just accelerated it. And you see that the hybrid work programs, we only have to be in the office 2-3 days a week. There's no point in having a private dedicated space just for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And we're seeing it here in our local market where a lot of our downtown area has been, kind of losing a lot of office presence even before the pandemic, but it kind of got accelerated through that. And, Humana is a big employer here in Louisville, and, they had planned to kind of reduce their footprint downtown, but with COVID and everyone working from home, they've started to really offload their office presence downtown. But we've seen a lot more of a shift towards the east end of the city. I don't know if that's maybe something similar that you're seeing in your market where, there used to be historically, this was kind of the area that people wanted to be in, or this type of property was the type that wanted to be in. And now it's kind of shifted to like more satellite. Like how does that look in your market currently?
Yeah. So you are seeing kind of hub and spoke models, even on the office side, where there's, we've got talent that's spread out. Our sprawl is terrible. I don't know if I mentioned in the podcast, but one of the things I say a lot to people coming in from out of market is Houston's 2 hours from Houston, right? You've got a submarket super far north called the Woodlands, and then you could go all the way, down to Sugar Land, and that's a long drive with traffic. That's a 2-hour drive. And they're totally different talent bases, but they're both really good. They're both kind of the desirable talent. And there's a lot of office occupiers that choose to office in those submarkets. But if you're trying to capture more talent, there's some civil engineers that have done that. Lots of civil engineers. Actually, we have a lot of development going on, and there's a few that just have multi-site offices. They'll have, 3, 4, 5. There's one that even has like 10 or 12 offices across the city just to capture the talent in every kind of pocket. And they're smaller, there's no, they're not taking a full floor anywhere. They'll do 3,000 to 5,000 foot offices kind of all over the city and have, 15, 20 people in each one.
That's amazing. Yeah. And as far as the current market landscape is concerned, what are some of the, I guess, the availability of certain product, and then maybe what is so desirable at this point where it's, wasn't maybe a year or 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, it's, that question comes up a lot. How's your market? On paper, the market looks soft. Some institutional investors are afraid of Houston. We have, historically high vacancy. But when you really drill down, if you've got a nice building with nice move-in ready space, and gosh, if it's furnished even still, I'm in bidding wars right now, even post-pandemic, for a 4,000. I've done it on a full floor deal. I've done it on partial floor deal. And now even on like 3,900 feet, there's like multiple offers on a move-in ready furnished space. And so whenever you get something like that, concession packages go way down. Yeah. So it's overall it's soft. There's different pockets of the city. If you go just west of downtown on I-10, it's single digit vacancy there, even though citywide we're at 20% ish. You're inside of single digits, just in that one little pocket, because that's where everybody wants to be. It's where all the nice, new, shiny, cool buildings are, and some mixed use developments. And so all the trendy things, that stuff pays off.
Yeah. You alluded to the furnishings within office. I remember when we had talked on our podcast, you had mentioned that, and that was definitely an interesting fact. Here in Kentucky, we, in the Louisville and the East End, we're seeing a lot of, office condos. Like a lot of smaller businesses are like seeking out these office condo deals. And I mean, they're really, really hard to come by in our market. And, I'm not sure if that's something similar in your area or anything like that. Cause I mean, obviously it's a much bigger city. But
yeah, that's a very suburban deal. And that's a very specific user, right? The type of person
Correct.
that, that's the office condo is the epitome of like, I don't want to pay rent to the man. I want to own my own deal. Typically they're stick built. They're not very modular. You can't reconfigure them easily. Sometimes you get a nicer one that's like a drop ceiling with steel frame construction that you could reconfigure at some point. But, it's a small company deal, maybe an insurance agent or something like that wants to have equity in their property. for most of my clients though, when they look at, doing something like that or even buying a building, you look at the returns that most institutional office investors are getting. I mean, I think going in cap rates are like 4 to 5% on Class A stuff, even maybe 6 if it's got a little distress on it. If you were to invest, if you're a business owner and you took that capital for the cash coming in and invested it in your core business, you'd probably get, a 7 to 8x return versus what you would on owning your own real estate, right? Most of my clients, their cash on cash return for their core business is way better than 6%. So
Absolutely.
that's where like owning your own space just doesn't make as much sense. But there is demand for it. There, the office condo thing, I've done some of those.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's not the bread and butter for here for sure.
No, absolutely not. No, I was interested to hear your take on it. But you also mentioned, on the landlord side that you are, starting to represent, or you have represented landlords in the filling of space as well. Can you kind of touch on some of the, when you start going on site and you try to identify ways that you can improve the marketing or whatever really is the problem with it, the landlord's approach? What are some of the issues that you typically see in those instances?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is your space isn't moving ready yet, right? The spec suite thing is really taken off. There's some owners, Howard Hughes Company being one of them, they're building a ton of spec suites, and those are very easy deals to do. Typically they're smaller footprint, right? Maybe 1,500 to 3,000 feet. And you're dealing with less sophisticated tenants that don't have the stomach for build out. They don't have an architect that they generally work with that have their standard program. They kind of know, those are the guys that say, oh yeah, I want, 4 offices. I want 7 bullpens and a little coffee bar area. And then a 6-person conference room. And that's exactly what you get with those sort of things. And negotiating those is interesting from the brokerage standpoint because, the deal's the deal. There's not a lot of concessions. You can kind of get in, you can kind of do the deal. And it's very simple on that side. And so the lease up and you're propping up your face rents with already doing the construction and you remove that whole risk from the process. So people love that sort of stuff. Justifying them to an owner is tricky because construction's so, I'm sure everybody on here has a story about construction blowing up a deal right now. I could give you 20. Yesterday on a tour, even the Hughes guys were telling, the Howard Hughes guys were telling us that, build out, not even from shell, just to remodel into a spec suite used to cost them $60 a foot. Now it's over 80 to $85. And we're not talking from shell. I remember I was in the business when like 45 to $50 could take you from a cold, dark shell to a finished out office space. And now you can't even do a remodel into a spec suite for 80, which is crazy to me. So getting buy-in from owners is tricky. And that where, it's helpful to know your numbers, right? You talk about the speed to lease, how much faster those spaces are going to lease, how much, you get the stories of getting multiple offers and competing tenants. That's kind of every landlord's dream, right? To have people clamoring to get in their space who can take the smallest concession package or really what we're seeing work better on the landlord side is not even like having this race to the top of who will pay more, but who's going to sign the deal first. Here's the deal, guys. First person to sign it gets it. I've had some of those happen. And I've even had Granite Properties, one of the owners here, they do great. I had a situation where I was on the losing end of a kind of where there was a group that toured 30 minutes before us. And so the landlord was like, I'm trying to be fair to everybody. Their group wanted it. They'll take it at what we asked for, just like you would. So if we can house your tenants for 5 months in some temp space, we'll build this exact same thing somewhere else in the building. And so they already had a fully negotiated deal based on the spec suite. It actually triggered 2 deals. It was a no-brainer. So getting some proof of concept. I don't know anybody on the landlord leasing side that doesn't like spec suites. I know some owners that are afraid to build them, but that's like, you just, if you got into the real estate business to make money, then you have to be able to see the ROI on leasing that stuff up faster.
Absolutely. No. And you even alluded to like being willing to accommodate or work with people when it comes to certain things. And especially like, I'd imagine it's not 100% common to work with a building that, fills up rapidly all the time. I'm assuming sometimes when they bring you in to a situation, there's some things that need to be tweaked in order to make sure that, the space becomes a lot more attractive to potential tenants. And so, I'm sure the willingness of the owner to kind of work with you and, really understand what they need to do to get the space to where it needs to be so that it is attractive to a broad base of tenants is probably a big thing that you have to work with.
Yep. And so we can get creative. If somebody tells me, I've had some really big owners say, we don't have the appetite for a spec suite right now. And so what I'll do is, I keep a space planner on retainer. She's a virtual assistant, and I'll just take the existing floor plan and say, give me a modern office layout here. And in all of my marketing, I market that, right? I get a nice 3D plan drawn up and Revit or whatever she's using. And then I just put a little note in the floor plan that says, sample brochure. This is what we could build. Almost build it as market it as like a spec suite that we could build.
That's amazing. Yeah, because people are visual. So I mean, providing that context, I'm sure, is amazing. I'm sure it helps a lot with. Yeah, that's so.
And 100% of the time, every deal I've brought there, they've said, we want this. We want exactly what we saw in the brochure. That's exactly what we want to build. When you start figuring out scope of work and stuff, they're like, yeah, we want it just like you showed us. Okay, great.
Okay, great. That saves us a lot of time, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So on the investment side, and this maybe stems from, I'm not too sure, I guess, the level at which you're involved with office building investment, whether that's, on the buy side or, help disposition of office buildings as well. But, if you could touch on a little bit of some of the things that, but these buyers look out for, or things you need to look out for as you're looking at these types of opportunities, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So the deals I'll speak to there, the stuff we're not doing like the big institutional, million square foot. We just bought with a client buy it, but we're involved in now running the deal for him. It was a fully leased kind of one story. It was a flex building, had a small pocket of a warehouse that had a government tenant in it. And then there's another, like a second tenant in there. And, the big things we're looking at is, the credit of the rent roll, having the government in there, they're paying to work with, but they don't miss rent payments. Right. So that was a big upside for the buyer. The property condition, we looked a lot at just how old the infrastructure was and what kind of replacements we're going to look at as far as roof, HVAC stuff, getting good property condition reports. I mean, it's nothing nobody else is looking at. That's a pretty standard, and any of us buying anything would kind of look through that stuff. But the strength of the rent roll has been super important lately, especially going through, we've kind of had some turbulent times in the ability to pay rent business. And so coming, through the pandemic, who could still pay rent then, who still had clients, we're like, this building had the government and an insurance company, and those are both great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. And you even kind of alluded to the construction cost, because I'm sure office is probably one of the most capital intensive, build outs, I would imagine maybe the most. I'm sure between retail and office, they're up there. So I'm sure that's part of it too. I mean, especially if a user turns over. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's capital intensive right now. We got outbid on it was a freestanding metal building that was like 7,000 feet. I was trying to buy it, and I think it went under contract for over $150 a foot. 2 years ago, we could have built that building like for $90 a foot. And now I'm trying to buy a 10-year-old one that needed some work, had a little roof leak, and I got outbid. I would think I was like 130 or 135, which was a stretch for me, but I had a tenant in tow, so I could make the numbers work, and I was going to be in it for an 8 cap. And then, they come back and be like, hey, we think you can close. We see your kind of track record. Would you do like 150 something a foot? And I was like, no way.
That's so crazy, man. And was it an owner occupant that was looking to buy it, or was it similar? I guess they wouldn't share that information.
I don't know. Yeah, they didn't tell me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's
wanted it more than I did.
Absolutely. No, and we've seen it here, and it's happening really across the country. So it's definitely not an isolated incident by any stretch of the imagination. So
yeah.
One of the things I was curious about, and just to give you a breakdown of kind of the audience that we attract. I mean, we attract people who are in all scopes of the commercial real estate landscape: brokers, investors, bankers, insurance people, lawyers, etc. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on your end is related to your business development efforts, in particular because you've grown so fast on your own as far as the Rifle real estate is concerned. I would love to kind of gain your insights on, the business development strategies that you employed to secure, the tenants and other office, owners, or whatever however you approach that particular process, because I think it would add a lot of value to the audience.
Yeah. So Mike Lipsy is who I got a lot of our stuff from. And then I kind of take it a little bit next level with some more automated software, but generally in the first session you'll ever take with Mike Lipsy, if it's a business development topic, he's going to say best database wins. So that's what I found to be true. Coming up in the office tenant rep business is where I've spent most of my early career. Lots of stacking office buildings. And I would do it. You could buy lists, you could download lists from CoStar, you can all sorts of stuff. But I always found having really good, clean data was easier for me to work with. And so I just spent the effort, right? Landon's a junior broker with our company, and he's, I'm kind of setting him through like what my day would look like if I was him. He's on the call right now. And, kind of you assume like 8 to 5 will be filled with like tours, meetings, whatever, deal related material. And so after hours, I remember early career with like, kids would go to bed, wife would want to watch a show, and I'd be sitting there stacking an office building, looking up who the tenants were, who the contacts were on LinkedIn, scraping whether, wherever it was, finding out name and email, and putting that sort of stuff into my database so that the next morning my call list was ready and I had good info. I knew who I was going to reach out to. I wasn't just like, oh, who's responsible for your real estate? How much term do you have on your lease? I could call and be like, hey, I just, if I closed a deal, I'd stack in a building, I would stack that whole building and market to them, be like, hey, I just represented one of your neighbors on their lease renewal. Love to talk about the concession package we saw. And now, now there's so many cool automation things. You can take that same list and just dump it into an automated sequence, whether it's with a outreach.io, Outplay, HubSpot does the automation. There's so many tools out there where you could kind of come up with your sequence. What you don't want to do is have it sound like it's a canned automated sequence, but scheduling those follow-ups and your touch points lets you operate at a scale that a lot of your competitors can't.
Yeah. And the tech enabled piece is probably huge. I mean, the fact that
100%.
Yeah. I mean, and for those of you guys who don't know, I mean, I had a chance to talk to Terry on the podcast, and just the automations and the systems that he's created in his business is truly impressive. It really is. And so, it's great to hear you say that, because a lot of times, in particular, when you first get started, you're just kind of aimlessly shooting in the dark a lot of times. At least that's how I was. I really didn't have much of a guidance of what to do. I just was kind of getting out there, but hearing that insight, I think, would be helpful to a lot of people. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
But I guess as far as resources are concerned, for those who want to learn more about, the office side of the business, what exactly do you have some, resources or organizations or publications that you follow that kind of give you information that's pertinent to that?
I would get really good friends with some good interior architects that do corporate interiors. I've learned a ton. I've been able to short circuit my learning through them. My friend Raymond runs Adventure Design here in Houston. They just recently rebranded as just Adventure, but they've been great. They do, they're one of the kind of the big four that do a lot of the office work in the city. They started also kind of doing a lot of tenant stuff. They have a landlord division. They kind of do everything now, but he's now the head guy. He took it over, bought out, and he's the head partner now. And having a resource like that I can text and ask questions to. He and I actually did during the pandemic. We were both sitting at home bored. We did a little live LinkedIn deal, just talking about the change of office, what pandemic stuff is going to change in the interior world. And so it's good for me to hear, what's stuff costing? What are people asking for? What's changing? What sort of densities are you seeing? Because that's also, people look at, as an office tenant rep, they look at you almost as like their corporate real estate advisor. One of the ways I've kind of marketed myself is like, hey, let me be your third party, like your outsourced corporate real estate department. So as you're doing this stuff, like, I don't need to do like day-to-day facilities management, but if you want to talk like strategy in the office, I want to be able to speak to that a little bit and have somebody that's smarter than me that kind of filled me in and gave me some good talking points. And so, the hoteling stuff, what are some good apps to use if you want to implement hoteling? Who can you bring in? Architects have been really, really helpful. That said, there's nothing that replaces your experience that you get by doing deals. Like by sitting in the room, taking a list of requirements that a company has, and then trying to find that in the marketplace and taking that deal from start to finish. You just can't replace that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you could talk to those experiences with your other clients too. I mean, now that I've been in the business for a couple of years, and, there's a lot of, past clients that I can reference and say, well, in this situation, this is what we did. And, maybe we did this and it wasn't necessarily the best thing to do there. So let's try to approach something a little bit different.
Yep.
So, and I think it helps build that trust when you can refer to the previous experiences you had to provide, unique insights to your clients. But I appreciate the thoughts there.
There's knowing your case studies is helpful too. There's a group, you're trying to one of the things I talk about a lot that you can't really capture in a metric. There's no kind of lease analysis I can build you that can talk about the impact on your brand and your ability to attract and retain talent. I can find out from HR people what it costs to have an employee turnover, to retrain them. But if you're trying to grow and you're trying to get top talent, we had a client, they got acquired, national consulting company now. We did like a 4,000 foot lease for them in 2016. We put them in City Center, which was one of the premier projects at the time. It was, almost $50 a foot, big build out, awesome modern space. It was great. It's like one of the premier mixed use facilities of like the live, work, play. It's a really cool area, cool building. We put them in there, and at the time, I think they had like 20 people when they went in there. Now their Houston headcount is 160. Right. So if you're trying to grow, and you want to have an office that people want to come to, like, we can help you figure that out. We kind of know where everybody wants to be. And so that's a good, like, you want to talk about stretching for your office. They were looking at like Class B buildings and trying to do like a really nice space inside of a Class B building. And the Houston leadership, to their credit, fought and be like, this doesn't work in Houston. The Class B buildings in Houston don't have all this like surrounding lifestyle stuff. We need to stretch and we need to spend the money here. And as a broker, it's a little bit selfish to be like, oh, I want to make this transaction value bigger. So having a good story of like, hey, I'm happy to represent you anywhere you want to go. I know sometimes it's hard to justify spending X amount of dollars on your rent, but here's what we've seen in the past with clients that have done this when they're in growth mode and there's a reason to do it. At some point, maybe their strategy stabilizes and they go to like an A- and just kind of do the, slow and steady deal. But when you're trying to make a splash and get something cool, having a cool office space helps. Flip side of that, and as a good tenant rep, I would want to say this, like, I have had one of my clients tell me taking on too much space is like the kiss of death. He was the CEO of an oil and gas company that had a full floor. And in 2014, he almost took a second floor thinking he would grow into it. Company was in explosive growth mode. Well, if you follow the oil and gas market, in 2016, oil hit $22 a barrel, massive downturn. The Houston office market went in the crapper for a long time. It was very hard to do to get deals done because the rents were so low to justify the construction, and it was just kind of a mess. And he was like, man, I just dodged a bullet there. And so now he did like most of the private equity oil and gas guys go. He left and started again with like a handful of people. And so we got him a couple thousand feet of office, and he's like busting at the seams of it already. But he just kind of knows, he's seen like, okay, I dodged a bullet last time. So he's being a lot slower to expand. So
yeah, I know, and you're 100% right. I mean, and that's why having someone like you in their corner is so helpful, because you have that experience that you can lean on, and now you could provide those stories to them and say, look, maybe in this situation it's appropriate to really search out this situation, but this is also what happened in the past that I can refer to. So it kind of gives you two perspectives to look at, so you could effectively make the best decision for your business. So there's nothing that replaces experience, as they say. So that's awesome.
For sure.
All right. Well, so what I'm gonna go ahead and do now is I wanted to give you guys some opportunities to ask some questions. So we'll open it up to Q&A as well. We are live. So, for those of you guys who are watching on social, I'll be checking the comments as well, but go ahead, feel free to type away in the chat box, and then we will read it off just to make it a little bit more efficient. So yeah, feel free to type away. Here, I'll check the online. And then also, another question that I had just out of, as we're waiting for some questions is, if you could go back in time to when you first started in the business. So, you just transitioned away from what you were doing before, and now you got into the brokerage space. What is, I guess, one of the main insights that you'd like to impart to yourself to be able to, shrink the timeline, as they say, for, success?
Ooh. Starting in the commercial real estate business, there's so many ways you could go. And it's so easy, especially if you're at a company with any sort of size to it that has a lot of deal flow. I would have hung with my mentor longer. We kind of ran out of prospects in the submarket we were in, and it was it's great. He's still one of my best friends, but I just would have found a way to work together a little bit longer. And also, there's a book I read, kind of the author called it his red velvet rope policy of like the types of clients that he would do business with. I would have stuck with that a little bit longer, or I would have implemented that a little bit sooner. I remember early on, there was a lot of like just complete time suck deals that were off brand, and you're just your straight commission, for me, I had wife, kids, family, like needed to make money. I was like, I'm not turning any deal down. I'm going to do every deal I can. There was a couple that were just massive time moves that I would have probably been better served by ignoring or passing on. And so that would be it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And I've faced that in my career. I mean, I've had deals that I've worked on for months and months and months and just never materialized into something. And, I should have probably seen the signs early on, but I was just inexperienced. I just didn't know. And I was trying so hard to get things done. So
yeah, somebody asked the name of the book. I'm going to have to find it.
Yeah. Where's on that?
Michael Port's Book Yourself Solid.
Michael Port's Book Yourself Solid. That's great. So if you guys are listening, I'm going to add that to my list. All right. So Mike asks, TI dollars have become a deal maker / breaker for our market. What is a good strategy for convincing ownership to offer more to secure a tenant?
Oh man. I would love to know what market you're in. Cause really TI dollars are just a deal breaker here. I don't know any deals that are made over TI.
Charlotte.
Okay. Charlotte. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty hot market with lots of demand. One of the ways to get around it is get an owner that's good at construction, or get your owner to get good at construction. It's one of those things that if this is what's screwing up a deal, like how do you become an expert in it? There's some owners in town that have like figured out they've got good relationships with contractors and they control all the work in their building and they're just doing turnkey deals. And so just remove that whole variable and say, we'll pay for the construction, whatever it is. Get really good, or get your owners good at writing good scopes of work. And it'll make them a little bit easier instead of offering more. I very rarely go back to a landlord and say, we want more improvement dollars. I will go back and say, we want you to turnkey it. And I found tenants more agreeable to giving up free rent and to pay more rent to remove that risk, which is an owner that's like music to my ears. Like free rent and more rent is all good things.
So what would you say? So Savannah asks, what would you say in the most productive way you build commercial clientele when starting out?
Why do I hate Dallas? That's a good one too. Most productive way. If you're not on the phones, I don't know how you're doing it. There's so many gurus that'll say, we could get you leads, or you could go to LinkedIn, or all this sort of stuff. But at some level, you're going to have to interrupt somebody's time and see if they want to meet and talk about real estate. So, do it. I mean, there's no real shortcut to business development in that stage. That said, I would pick a specialty and pick a thing that you want to do to brand yourself and go all in on that. So if you're going to be an office tenant rep, then own office tenant rep for a season. You can expand it. I've grown into an office and industrial. We do landlord. We do tenant rep stuff. We're doing some, investment. You can grow into other deals later, but for initially, when you're super green, to have credibility, just learn one thing well and just iterate that over and over and over again.
That's awesome.
Why do I hate Dallas? We call Dallas the city of $40,000 millionaires. So you get guys that are fresh out of college, they move to Dallas, they go buy a 7-year-old BMW with a 7-year note that they'll be paying on, for 14 years. And everybody wears suits to everything just because they can, and they think their sports teams are better than everybody else. So Dallas is just, it's trying to be something it isn't. Fort Worth is 1,000 times better. And we have a better baseball team.
That's fun.
A correction in the commercial industry. Are we talking about commercial real estate industry?
Yes. So the question, just for you guys who are listening, do you foresee a correction in the commercial real estate industry? Let's move forward with that.
Yeah, I don't know that the bottom's going to fall out of anything. We've got, typically commercial real estate's a little bit insulated from big booms and busts like that. I think office is changing. I don't see office going away. A word of caution to anybody that has a company with lots of office space is don't swing the pendulum too far. I have had clients and friends with big companies go like fully remote and totally abandon all of their office, and they're regretting that. It's hard to train, it's hard to recruit, it's hard to onboard, it's hard to mentor, and it's hard to succession plan when everybody's in sweatpants on their chair on Zoom calls, right? Another caution too, I've heard of some companies moving their back office out of the office, like their accounting, their HR functions, that sort of stuff. And there's been studies that show like a lot of accountants now, corporate accountants in-house, are doing 2 jobs. They went and got a second job. So completely second salary, and they just, split their time between the companies. And when their companies say, let's go back into the office, it becomes kind of a mess. So I don't see a massive correction. I just, I see ever evolving change.
Yeah, no, that's some great insight. So another question that was asked was, what team members would you suggest are the best, such as a CPA, a real estate lawyer, a developer, et cetera?
And if you've got a good buddy that's a real estate lawyer and will give you free advice, that's excellent. I haven't found them. I have some very good attorney friends, and I typically don't ask them to work for free. I say, hey, send me an engagement letter for this specific thing. But that's great. Team members, I always liked having contacts that call on the same clients I do. It becomes a good referral source. One that's not listed that I would think about is a good financial advisor that focuses on business owners. So I just know a ton of financial advisors. It's one of the few verticals in kind of the finance, insurance, real estate business. I've known a lot of people to go into that space. I've got a good friend from college that his book of business is like $1 million plus in investable assets, lots of business owner type things. He works hand in hand with the investment bank at the firm that he's in and does a lot of big commercial transaction deals like that. And that's a great guy for me to know, right? Because I can service his clients and he can service some of mine, right? And on the landlord side, we've got some very high net worth individuals that we work for. And as they start estate planning and that sort of stuff, I could say, look, if you don't want all your money in real estate, here's a good guy to talk to. And so you can send referrals back and forth.
Absolutely. That's some great insights. Question, how do you think the pretentiousness you spoke on Dallas having impacts on the market here, being Dallas?
I don't know that translates. I think it's just, the market's already normalized to the pretentiousnS that's there.
That's funny. No, I like the healthy rivalry that you guys have. I went to Arizona State and Phoenix, and there's like a healthy rivalry with their University of Arizona. So we're always giving each other crap, so. I
mean, the sad fact, like Dallas is crushing us on corporate relocations, right?
Yeah.
If you're a company and you want to get the benefits of doing business in Texas and you're looking at Houston, hour from the coast, we had Hurricane Harvey, massive flooding, super hot, super humid, rain, floods, all sorts of stuff. That just doesn't, and, no real metro transit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Dallas, which is like Dallas, Fort Worth, it's massive, 2 big airports, no flooding. They get, pretty mild winters. On paper, it's just better. So that's why you get, more people going to Dallas than Houston, but we still catch more than our fair share.
Absolutely.
So from a corporate real estate, I have some very successful broker buddies in the Dallas Fort Worth market. And I've even got a guy that left the same firm I was at and started his own thing in that market that's operating under my license right now. And so, as much as I love to mess with Dallas, I think it's a great real estate play for a company.
Absolutely. Definitely. That's very noble of you to say, right?
That's right.
There you go. All right. So John asked a question, any suggestions marketing a less desirable office building, et cetera, not ideal submarket, older asset, et cetera?
Yep. Spend the money to make it nice. There's no, just like there's no shortcuts in business development as far as picking up the phone and calling. Like you're going to have to spend the money to make it nice and desirable. So, the not ideal submarket, usually that comes with some security concerns. So like answer those security concerns. 24/7 security, walk into your car, fence lot, controlled access parking lot. It's gonna cost money. Usually those are whoever bought that is looking at some sort of value add play. And so you actually have to add the value to make the play. Older asset, make sure that modernize it. Like the bones of the building can be modernized. You might not be able to change the efficiency of the building as far as your floor plate size, but you can make sure that, it's not too hot, it's not too cold. Tenant amenity lounges is what I've seen some of those guys putting in. Maybe you don't have the density in the daytime population to justify like a hot cafe, but you can do like a grab and go with like the video monitor thing. I've seen people put that sort of stuff in, find ways to amenitize it. If it's a smaller building too, you can offer things like signage. There's some buildings that we're working deals on right now that they have 10,000 foot floor plates. They're pretty small. And if you take a full floor, they're 4-story buildings, the landlord will give you signage. So now you're a 10,000 foot tenant and you can have a full floor and get your sign on the building, versus taking, half or a third of a floor plate at some stuff down the street. They're going to pull the lever on that building because you get the full floor branding. It's kind of a cool play for a smaller tenant.
That's great.
Covered parking too. I don't know what market you're in, John. Here in Houston, if you can offer covered parking, I mean, I drive a black truck and it's hot, right? It was 104 yesterday. It was miserable. So I just have decided like I'm never going to operate somewhere where I don't have covered parking to the extent I can control it.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely a fair assessment. So, Amanda asks, can I reach out to either of you gentlemen for future questions? Do either of you being willing to be a casual mentor? As far as reaching out for questions, I know I'm receptive to it. Obviously, Nick, I'm sure is too. I don't know what the whole, mentor thing looks like, but I would definitely be open to at least answering any questions. Always happy to hop on a call and just share whatever insights I can. Obviously, Nick is much more experienced than I, so he's probably going to be able to share a lot more insights, but
and I don't know. I don't know your resume. I just know my hair's grayer.
Yeah, you're well, no, I can tell
which is a crazy thing to think about. It's funny. I remember when I got into commercial real estate, I was later career, but still youngish. I was young 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, below average competitive CrossFitter. And so like, you look at my brokerage pictures from like early career, I just had to update them all. Cause I was like, man, that kid looks like he's 11. And I can tell you now, like having a business owner title and some gray hair and being able to complain about, looking at the cost of college for my oldest, like you're peer to peer now with a lot of the business owners. Like it does get easier. And so that goes back to like being super specific on your specialty. Like if you're going to be younger and in the business, find a reason why somebody that owns a business and gets sold to all the time wants to talk to you. If you're the expert in something, then be the expert in something.
Yeah, no, that's some great insights.
And yes, happy to have, I've had a ton of people pouring to me over the course of my career. Happy to, informal mentor, whatever, if we want to meet. Savannah, I think you're in Dallas too. I'm up there a good bit. Well, I'm in Fort Worth, so you'd have to make the drive, but happy to connect up there. And I know some really good guys and girls in that market too, that probably happy to visit with you.
Absolutely. So, and for those of you guys who are listening, yes, this will be available for, this recording is being recorded. So we will be posting this on all social platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really, you can access it anywhere. It's gonna be very hard for you not to find it. How about that? Awesome. Let me check the other message boards real quick to see. Okay. I mean, I think you answered all the questions, man. So, I greatly appreciate your time as always, Nick.
Sure.
For those of you guys, like I said, I run a podcast called the Commercial Real Estate Academy as well. And Nick was one of our guests on the podcast and he provided a lot of great insights. And if you guys want to check it out, you should definitely do so. It really was a great episode. But as far as, if people want to learn more about you, if people wanted to, potentially do business with you in Houston, what's the best way for them to be able to reach out?
Yeah, our website, riflecre.com, will point you to anybody. We're still kind of updating. I need to update the team section, but that's the best spot to find us. I mean, in the real estate, in the real estate business, I've tried to make myself easy to find. So that's a good spot. I mean, Instagram, where else are we? I don't have a YouTube channel yet. That'd be fun to do. Twitter, I had to get it off of. It was just too much of an echo chamber. With Elon trying to buy it, I was like, oh, maybe I can re-engage. Like, nah, just no time.
Oh
and my problem with Twitter too, this is a good, just free advice for people coming up in the business, network outside of commercial real estate. We are the worst about, pay $500 a year, join this organization, and you get all this mentorship from these people. No, you don't. All you're going to do is you're going to go to lunch once a month. It's going to be unnecessarily fancy at a country club. You're going to have to put a suit on. You're going to hear one of your peers talk about stuff you already know, and you're going to meet other people that are like peers. Like meeting peers in this business is great, but you're not going to make it very far. This is just for brokers anyway. You're not going to make it very far if you don't meet clients. And so instead of spending time, and we like to give ourselves awards, and I'm the, I got a CoStar Power Broker. I got, Landlord Rep of the Year with NAIOP and all these, like we love to give ourselves awards and sit around and tell us how good we are. Find something outside of this industry to get involved in, to meet people. It'll just serve you a lot better.
Yeah, I could not agree more with what you just said as well. I mean, I think one of the first things you should do, in particular when you're first getting started, is to try to find something you're passionate about, like, and get involved on some board or, some association, and surround yourself with people who also have a similar interest and passion, because that's the connection point that you can establish, especially if you're not from the area. If you're newer to the market for some reason, that's, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get started. And obviously what you mentioned earlier about the business development side is also crucial, but
yep, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Nick, we greatly appreciate your time. As I said before, you did provide a lot of great insights for those of you guys who are tuning in. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, obviously we would greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference. For those of you guys who are on the call right now, feel free to come back and engage. We do this on a bi-monthly basis, and we share insights, or we invite people to share insights on a variety of different commercial real estate topics. So again, thank you all so much for stopping by. Nick, thank you so much again, and we'll see you all next time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See you.